Tonight, many of America's farmers already feeling the pinch are worried about the possibility of more challenges.
One million acres of farmland in the breadbasket of California lie fallow. More than 4,800 acres in Iowa have been put up for public auction. Small farmers in Kansas, Arkansas, and North Carolina are desperate because they can't sell their crops. America, the world's #1 superpower, a symbol of prosperity, is facing an unexpected nightmare. America no longer has enough food. People are fighting over trays of eggs and cartons of milk. Supermarket shelves are empty. Prices are skyrocketing. The cause of this tragedy is that a series of large-scale farms, the backbone of American agriculture, are collapsing day by day. Worse, 10 states are facing the biggest food crisis in American history. Can America overcome the modern-day war on food shortages? 1. California, the agricultural capital of the U.S., is running out of vegetables. Linda, a mother in Fresno, California, recently went to the supermarket 3 times a week and still couldn't find enough greens for her children. Everything was out of stock, from spinach to tomatoes, Linda sighed. I don't understand what's happening to California agriculture. California, once known as the fruit basket of the United States, supplies nearly half of the country's fruits and vegetables, from the red apple orchards of the north to the sweet strawberry fields of the south. California produces more than 80% of the United States almonds, nearly 90% of its romaine lettuce, and nearly all of the country's winter strawberries. But now, this fertile land is facing an unprecedented crisis that is shaking the entire American agricultural industry. More than 200 farms in the Central Valley, which produces nearly half of the country's vegetables, will close by 2025. Prolonged drought has turned more than 1 million acres of farmland into barren desert. Water prices have tripled, forcing farmers like Jack, a strawberry farm owner in Modesto, to abandon 70% of his crop. We don't have enough water to irrigate, we don't have enough workers, and with such high costs, how can we grow crops? Jack said. The problem is not just the prolonged drought, but also water allocation policies that favor urban and industrial areas, leaving thousands of agricultural farms parched and barren. Irrigation costs have tripled in the past few years, forcing many farmers to sell their land or close their doors. Furthermore, the immigrant labor force that forms the backbone of California's agricultural industry is in serious short supply. Tighter immigration controls, coupled with rising living costs, have forced many workers to leave, with dire consequences for farms. Many of us can't keep going because of the high cost of housing and living, said Miguel, a migrant worker in a tomato field in the Central Valley. When the workers leave, the farms can't survive. Notably, California is the largest avocado-producing state in the United States, with more than 3,000 family farms involved in the industry. But California's $1.5 billion avocado industry is at risk as pests from Mexico spread, posing a serious threat to local avocado groves. The situation became more urgent after the United States withdrew USDA inspectors from imported orchards in Mexico, reducing the ability to monitor and contain the disease before it reaches the market. The consequences will not only directly affect the productivity and quality of California avocados, which are the main source of supply for the entire United States, but also put enormous pressure on farmers and businesses that depend on this billion-dollar industry. It is a stark warning about the fragility of agricultural supplies and the dangerous risks of reduced oversight in international trade. Is the nation's great agricultural dream on the brink of collapse? The collapse not only signals an economic crisis, but also signals a breakdown in the food supply chain, from the fields to the people's tables. You wouldn't believe it, but the U.S. is currently facing the biggest egg shortage ever. Egg prices are at record highs, and Americans are fighting over every dozen eggs. 2. Ohio, a serious chicken and egg crisis. At a small supermarket in suburban Columbus, single mother Rachel Morris, 32, stood in front of an empty shelf where eggs had once been. She had gone to 3 stores in a row and failed to buy a carton of eggs for her 2 children's breakfast. Eggs, the simplest thing, are now more expensive than beef, Rachel said with a sigh. Ohio was once known as the egg capital of the United States, with more than 36 million hens and an annual production of 9 billion eggs, accounting for more than 14% of the nation's total. But in the first 4 months of 2025, an unexpected disaster changed everything. A devastating outbreak of avian influenza spreading rapidly through large industrial farms in Allen, Hardin, and Mercer. Ohio alone has had to cull more than 17 million egg-laying hens, nearly half the state's total flock, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA. Aerial images show dozens of vast warehouses that once produced millions of eggs a day, now covered in black tarps and silent. The loss of millions of chickens has severely affected the egg supply chain across the United States. The United States is witnessing an unprecedented egg crisis, with egg prices reaching record highs. People in many states are now spending more than $10 for a carton of eggs. For organic or free-range eggs, the price is even higher, around $18.99. Despite their willingness to pay, many people are having trouble finding eggs due to limited supply, and they are even limited in how many eggs they can buy at a time. Currently, some supermarkets limit each customer to a maximum of 2 cartons of eggs, and many supermarkets such as Walmart and Kroger have had to actively stock up and charge extra for this item. Bakeries have stopped taking orders, schools have been forced to change their menus, and people are hunting for eggs like they're hunting for gold. On the social network TikTok, many people are showing off their spoils of a few boxes of eggs secretly bought at the flea market, with the hashtag #JassAJoff quickly spreading. Even in the context of continuing high egg prices, many places have experienced egg theft. According to NBC News, a group of thieves stole 100,000 eggs worth about 40,000, about 1 billion VND in Pennsylvania. Local police are working hard to investigate and solve this case. In an old wooden house in rural Shelby County, Joe Harrington, an egg farmer, looked quietly at his rows of empty barns. "I've never had to bury 200,000 chickens in a week," he said. Ohio 2025 is more than just an egg crisis. It's a wake-up call about the fragility of the nation's food system, where a single outbreak could bring an entire industry to its knees. Even the fruit-laden orchards that were once the pride of American agriculture were not immune to the wave of decline. 3. Florida. Orange farms are slowly disappearing. Florida was once the orange capital of the United States, producing 80% of the country's fresh orange juice supply. But now, residents are facing an incredible truth. Florida oranges are disappearing. According to the latest report from the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, the state's orange production has dropped by 65% in just 2 years to its lowest level since 1937. If in 2004, Florida harvested more than 240 million boxes of oranges, this year, that number is only less than 16 million boxes. An alarming number, breakfast with orange juice is gradually becoming a luxury item. Joe's orange farm once stretched over 50 acres, enough to feed his entire family. Now, all that's left are a few rows of withered trees, standing alone in the scorching sun. We tried, but the pandemic, the storms, the skyrocketing price of fertilizer, nothing was on our side, he says, looking off into the distance. Orange greening is one of the silent killers that is causing the disappearance of oranges. Spread by insects, the disease causes stunted trees, small, bitter-tasting fruit. Since 2010, the disease has spread to nearly all of Florida's orange groves. Not only that, but production costs have doubled in less than a decade. A ton of oranges now does not cover the cost of labor, irrigation, and pesticides. Meanwhile, federal support policies are considered unstable, slow to disperse, and unresponsive. Many farmers say that the cost of caring for their orange groves has increased by more than 40% compared to 5 years ago, while the selling price is not enough to cover the loss. Florida has no shortage of sunshine, but what it may lack is strategic long-term protection for local agriculture. Without action now, we could see orange juice in our supermarkets coming from Brazil, Mexico, or even South Africa. You might think, what's the big deal? It matters because it is a story about self-reliance, about the livelihoods of tens of thousands of American farmers, and about the agricultural identity that is the backbone of this country. In the next 5 to 10 years, without fundamental changes, the U.S. could have to import most of its orange juice, losing its food initiative in a sector that was once a strength. America's food heartland is in trouble too. 4. Iowa, the corn and soybean capital, is gasping for breath. Iowa is the heartland of America's corn and soybeans. The Golden Wheat Belt once produced more than 40% of the crop and fed millions of people. But sadly, the latest report from the U.S. Department of Agriculture shows that in the first quarter of 2025, corn production fell 17% compared to the same period last year, the largest decline in nearly 20 years. Once fertile fields are now being destroyed by heavy rains and flash floods, causing long growing seasons and severe crop failures. I have been plowing this land for 45 years, but this year the heavy rains have washed away the topsoil. I can only plant half of it, said a 68-year-old independent farmer outside Waterloo. Many young people in my village have left to find other jobs, and I am not sure who will follow. The aging of the farming population is a challenge that cannot be ignored. More than 30% of Iowa farmers are now over 65, while younger generations appear to be losing interest in traditional farming. Census Bureau statistics also show that only about 5% of farmers under 35 are still farming, the lowest level in decades. Worryingly, the rise in grain prices has not only impacted retail prices, but has also pushed up the prices of staples like meat, milk, and eggs. A study by the University of Iowa found that the price of chicken and beef has increased by an average of 12% over the past year, making it harder for many families to balance their daily expenses. Most alarmingly, more than 500 family farms in Iowa have closed in the past 12 months, leading to depopulation and emptiness in many rural areas. Wilderness has been sold to industrial agriculture corporations, destroying traditional values and biodiversity. Federal policy seems to be slow to respond. While large corporations prioritize exports, small farmers and local communities are left to suffer. As the food supply chain begins to crack at its roots, consumers in New York, Texas, and elsewhere will feel the ripples of rising prices at their dinner tables. Iowa is more than farmland. It is the heart and soul of American agriculture. And if that heart stops beating, the food crisis will no longer be a private affair. Did you know that the place known as the land of vast fields and endless BBQ parties is now also facing a serious food crisis? 5. Texas, where the cows gradually disappear and people's dinners become luxurious. Texas, the nation's top beef producer, is witnessing a rare sight. The country's largest cattle ranches are closing one after another, and skyrocketing beef prices are forcing many families to tighten their belts. Before, I could buy enough meat for the week for about $30, said Emily, a mom in suburban Houston. Now, dinner for a family of 4 costs nearly $50, and I have to choose each food carefully. The situation is getting worse when a report from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, shows that from early 2024 to mid-2025, the cattle herd in Texas decreased by 28%. The main reason, prolonged drought accompanied by unusual superstorms, has devastated grasslands, reducing essential food and water sources for cattle. In addition, the price of animal feed has increased by more than 45% during the same period, pushing many farms to the brink of bankruptcy. I have raised more than 400 cows for more than 35 years, said Carl Johnson, a veteran farmer in the San Angelo area. But this year, I had to sell more than half of them because there was not enough grass and not enough water. Every cow I sell is a part of my life that I have to put aside. The crisis has disrupted the food supply chain in major cities like Dallas and Austin, with many traditional markets and local supermarkets rationing supplies, leaving consumers facing rising prices and shortages of fresh food. What is worrying is that big food companies are prioritizing meat exports to international markets, especially Asia, where profits are higher, while local people are starving right on their own land. Texas, once the heart of America's cattle industry, is facing unprecedented challenges. Climate change, rising costs, and dwindling natural resources have made many farms unviable. Saving this vital industry will require a strong partnership between government, business, and the community to help farmers adapt to the new environment, develop sustainable farming models, and improve livestock farming techniques. If Texas is in crisis because of the scarcity of beef, this land is struggling with a lack of milk. Nebraska, the dairy land in the heart of America, is gradually drying up. 6. Nebraska, one of the key agricultural states in the United States, is currently facing a serious crisis in its dairy industry. The state's net farm income is expected to increase 55% by 2025 to a record $9.42 billion, according to a report from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Center for Agricultural Profitability. But that figure is largely driven by government subsidies and livestock profits, while the dairy industry is struggling. By the second quarter of 2025, more than 28% of family-owned dairy farms were either losing money or abandoned. Hundreds of small and medium-sized dairy farms have gone out of business in the past 2 years, leading to a 20 to 30% increase in the price of fresh milk in many rural areas. In addition, some schools and senior care facilities have been forced to switch to diluted or imported milk powder to cut costs. Drinking a glass of milk every morning may seem like a simple habit for Americans, but in Nebraska, it is becoming a luxury for many families. The situation is exacerbated by the fact that corn production, a key ingredient in Nebraska agriculture, has dropped nearly 35% compared to 2020. Meat processing plants in Omaha, Grand Island, and many other rural areas have also had to limit capacity due to lack of raw materials. The root cause lies in the high debt of the agricultural sector, along with the cost of fertilizer, fuel, and equipment that has doubled compared to 5 years ago. In addition, inflationary pressures and disruptions to global supply chains have pushed the cost of raising livestock, maintaining machinery, and maintaining farms to unmanageable levels. And the dominance of large corporations in the dairy industry is strangling the market, making small family farms increasingly disadvantaged. "I had hoped to keep dairying until I couldn't anymore," said a small farmer in Norfolk. "But 3 months ago, I had to sell all my cows, not because I was old, but because I couldn't afford to lose anymore. I don't know where my children and grandchildren will get their milk in the future, but it certainly won't be from Nebraska." Nebraska has long been a symbol of resilience and prosperity in American agriculture, a stalwart of the nation's food supply. But now, as farmers here struggle with mounting hardships, the question is, does America have the understanding and resolve to stand by them? Not only milk, but also the bread on the American breakfast table is at risk. 7. Kansas, America's breadbasket in trouble. In 2025, Kansas, once the pride of America's breadbasket, is experiencing a crisis as deep as it has not seen in nearly 6 decades. Prolonged drought, depleted soil, and climate change have left more than 40% of the state's wheat crop uncultivated, painting a bleak picture for an agricultural industry that is the heart of the state. Flour mills in Wichita and Salina are forced to operate at reduced capacity due to raw material shortages, causing domestic prices for bread, pasta, and cereals to climb by 18 to 35%. John Miller, a 52-year-old farmer living outside Wichita, once viewed his vast wheat fields as family heirlooms. "Every grain of wheat that goes into the ground is the crystallization of a lifetime," he said. But now, with his groundwater depleted and his soil depleted, he has been forced to sell some of his land to pay off mounting debts. "I remember the bountiful harvests of a decade ago, but now they are just memories." John is not alone. Many other farmers like Mary Thompson in Salina are facing the same situation. Mary, a resilient woman who has been plowing for more than 30 years, sadly said, "Wheat prices are high on the world market, but I am not getting much profit due to lack of land and irrigation water. Flour mills have almost had to reduce production due to the scarcity of raw materials, causing the price of bread and wheat products to increase by 20 to 35%. Local people are switching to expensive imported flour, and we are facing an uncertain future." The irony is that in Kansas, once the birthplace of American wheat, people are now paying more for imported flour from Canada and other countries. Tariffs and rising shipping costs have sent prices soaring. Meanwhile, many small farmers are forced to sell off their land, using the money to pay off debts, and their wheat fields are being replaced by industrial projects or renewable energy farms. This change has not only changed the face of the countryside, but also caused the traditional agricultural dream in Kansas to gradually fade away. Their story is not only a personal tragedy, but also a warning sign for the entire American agricultural industry. Instead of supporting small farmers, large agricultural companies are expanding land for renewable energy projects or industrial mining, causing traditional farms to shrink. And as the once golden wheat fields fade, the question is not just about rising bread prices, but whether Kansas and America can preserve its agricultural heart in a changing world. 8. New Mexico, farms fade, farmers leave. New Mexico, a vast, sunny land, was once known as a land of promise for bountiful harvests. But under the scorching sun, a different story is emerging. Once lush farms are withering, and farmers are abandoning their land, leaving behind cracked, parched fields. Miguel Sanchez, a 58-year-old farmer in Las Cruces, once proud of his luxuriant avocado farm, now sees his trees dying from the drought. Water is getting scarcer year after year. The groundwater is depleted. Without water, how can the trees survive? New Mexico has lost nearly 30% of its farmland in the past 5 years, according to a new report from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The numbers are not just a reflection of the current situation, but also a warning about the future of agriculture in this land. Traditional avocado, tomato, and vegetable farms are not only running out of water, but also being hit by rising fertilizer and energy costs, forcing many to scale back or shut down. The shelves are getting thinner and prices are going up, and I have to think about every meal I feed my 2 children, said Elena Romero, a single mother in Albuquerque. Low-income families, the elderly, and indigenous people are being hit the hardest. Food insecurity is becoming more widespread, with health and social consequences. New Mexico is at a critical crossroads. Climate change is not only drying out the land, but also altering the soil structure and ecosystems, putting many farmers in an unprecedented predicament. People like Miguel, who have been attached to the land their entire lives, now face a heartbreaking decision: hold on to the land with nothing they can do, or sell it and make a living elsewhere. Could there be a solution to save New Mexico's last farms? 9. Arizona, the desert stops blooming, America's winter vegetable basket is disappearing. There was a time in the heart of the Arizona desert when people witnessed something that seemed like a miracle: green vegetables growing from dry sand, thanks to the intelligence and advanced irrigation technology of humans. Arizona was even considered a winter vegetable basket of the United States, providing up to 80% of the lettuce in the cold season. But today's reality is completely different. More than 40% of the vegetable growing area has been abandoned in just 5 years. The desert has returned to its true nature of desolation. This time, not because of nature, but because of human hands. At a local farmer's market, an aging farmer sells his last bunches of cabbage. When asked if he still grows them, he simply shakes his head. The image lasts no more than a few seconds, but it encapsulates the tragedy of Arizona agriculture. Today, in supermarkets across the American West, lettuce, kale, and broccoli are mostly imported from Mexico, with some areas accounting for as much as 70% of imported produce, while domestic produce is increasingly scarce. This not only drives up vegetable prices, but also makes the U.S. food supply chain dependent on them, a feat once thought impossible. The problem is not technology or land. The problem is water, more precisely, access to water. The Colorado River was once the lifeblood of Arizona's agriculture, but in recent years, its flow has been drying up, not because of natural disasters, but because of water allocation policies that favor residential and industrial areas, pushing farmers out. Irrigation systems are cut, water contracts are canceled, and fertile farmland is forced to fallow. Farmers are no longer protected. In the new arrangements, they are the weakest. A field without water means not just a failed crop, but the collapse of an entire industry. America once prided itself on being a self-sufficient nation. But when a state that was once the capital of greens turns to importing vegetables, it's not just Arizona's story. It's a sign of a dependence that's spreading, insidious, and dangerous. 10. Michigan is losing its status as America's fruit basket. In the fall, Michigan used to be known as the cherry capital of the country, with the sweet scent of apples in the air. But those images are becoming a distant memory. Over the past 3 years, the state's apple and cherry acreage has dropped by nearly 25%, according to the Michigan Department of Agriculture. The orchards that once were the pride of the Midwest are disappearing. In traditional producing areas like Traverse City and Leelanau County, hundreds of small farms have gone out of business, not because the land is barren, but because production costs have skyrocketed. Fertilizer is up 40%, fuel prices are up more than 35% over the same period 5 years ago, and labor costs are up 20%. At wholesale markets like Detroit's Eastern Market or the Fulton Street Market in Grand Rapids, domestic fruit is increasingly absent. Many vendors say more than 60% of fruit is now shipped from states as far away as California, or even imported from Mexico or Chile, making prices 15 to 25% higher than previously domestic products. While many small farms have been squeezed by falling input prices, support for domestic produce has barely kept pace. A 2024 Michigan Farm Bureau survey found that 72% of fruit farmers in the state received no direct subsidies, even as they faced crop failures or lost profits. In addition, competition from cheap imported fruit is increasingly fierce. For example, a pound of apples imported from Mexico costs $0.89. A pound of Michigan apples costs $1.45. Tellingly, the current generation of Michigan farmers may be the last. Of the more than 47,000 farms in Michigan, according to USDA 2022, nearly 60% of the owners are over 60 years old. Many are selling their land because they can't find successors. Younger generations are not interested in a profession that is precarious, risky, low return, and unprotected. A 3-acre cherry orchard in Kent County that once produced more than 15,000 pounds of fruit each season now has only a for sale sign hanging quietly along the highway. No one is asking to buy. Michigan used to have national apple and cherry festivals where thousands of people flocked to enjoy the fresh produce. Now, many festivals have been canceled or scaled back because of a lack of domestic supply. When fruit travels thousands of miles to reach American dinner tables, it's not just an economic story. It's a warning that we're losing our ability to feed ourselves, and with it, a part of America's agricultural culture. When farms go out of business, it's not just the farmers who lose their livelihoods. It's a domino effect that drags down the entire American agricultural economy. From the abandoned fields of Arizona, to the leafless orchards of Michigan, to the shrinking dairy farms of California, each collapse leaves a void that's hard to fill. Consumers pay higher prices, travel farther for food, and end up with less fresh, unregulated imports. Farmers, once the backbone of the American dream, are increasingly marginalized in an economy that no longer prioritizes real production. America may be rich in technology, strong in the military, and a leader in many fields, but if it cannot grow and raise its own food, is it still a truly independent nation? Losing farms means not only losing food, but losing control over the future of the country. What we share in the video is the result of synthesizing and analyzing from many different perspectives to give you a true slice of the current picture. However, for a more comprehensive and objective view, please refer to other official and multidimensional sources of information.